thought that would be the end. Tied to a metal post in the middle of a crowded courtyard, I could smell the strong odor of gasoline burning my nostrils. A man approached, holding a lighter. Beside me, my husband trembled, not from ordinary fear, but from a silent terror I will never be able to describe. We had been condemned to be burned alive, and the crowd called us traitors, enemies of God. But at that moment, something unbelievable was about to happen, something that would change everything. If you've ever felt alone, as if God had turned away just when you needed him most, stay with me. This story isn't just mine. It can touch you too. My name is Amira Hassan. I'm 38 years old, and I was born in Irbid, a city in northern Jordan where mosques dominate the skyline, and tradition weighs heavily on every choice. I grew up in a devout family. My father, a fabric merchant, prayed 5 times a day without fail. My mother taught us to obey, to cover our heads, to never question. From a young age, I learned that questioning could be dangerous. Faith wasn't something to be debated. It was simply lived, and that's what we tried to do. Although something inside me was never completely at peace. I married Karim at 19, an intelligent and respected man who had studied in Amman and returned to our city with a degree that opened many doors for him. By the age of 28, he was already the Imam of an important mosque in Irbid. People consulted him about everything: marriages, inheritances, disputes. I was proud of him and the life we built together. We lived in a simple but comfortable house, and we had 3 children: Yasin, 9 years old, Layla, 7, and Omar, just 4. Our routine was predictable and safe, but something inside me yearned for more. I prayed, fasted, fulfilled every duty, but a persistent emptiness lingered. Sometimes, at night, when everyone was asleep, I would stare at the ceiling and whisper, "Are you there? Can you hear me?" And most of the time, there was only silence. Karim also carried his own burdens, though he never openly showed them. I saw him immersed in his texts, studying with an almost painful intensity. One night, I asked if he was all right. He looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm teaching things that I don't even fully understand myself." I didn't know what to say, and just left, but those words remained etched in my memory. Years passed. Our children grew up, and Karim gained even more respect and authority. I fulfilled my role as wife, mother, and woman of faith. On the outside, everything seemed perfect. But inside, we both felt that something was missing, something that prayers and good deeds couldn't fill. And then, when all seemed lost, God showed that nothing is impossible. Then, without warning, something unexpected entered our lives and began to transform everything. It wasn't planned nor sought. It was simply a presence that opened a door we could never close again. And when that door opened, the world we knew began to crumble, silently, almost imperceptibly. It all started with a new family in the neighborhood. They arrived quietly, without making a sound, living in a small house at the end of the street. Some neighbors commented that they were refugees from Syria. Others simply ignored them. I confess that, at first, I didn't pay them much attention either, until one day at the market, a woman approached me. She was older, perhaps around 55, her face marked by the weariness of life, but her eyes full of kindness. She smiled at me and asked, in Arabic, if I knew where I could buy flour more cheaply. I pointed to a nearby shop, and before leaving, she said something that made me stop. "May God bless you and fill you with his peace." She didn't say Allah. She said God, in a personal, warm way that touched something dormant within me. After that, I saw her a few times at the market, always kind, always with that smile that seemed to hold secrets, until one day she invited me for tea at her house. I hesitated. I didn't know her, but something inside me said, "Go." I went one afternoon when Karim was at the mosque and the children were at school. Her house was simple, clean, and smelled of fresh bread. We sat on the floor on worn cushions and began with trivial conversations: life, the children, the weather. But suddenly, she asked a question that struck me. "Have you ever felt like you were searching for something, but didn't know exactly what?" I was speechless. I looked down, unable to answer, but something inside me nodded. She smiled tenderly and said, "I also lived like that for years, until I found someone who filled my void." I asked who it was. She just looked at me, patiently and lovingly, and said, "His name is Jesus." My heart raced. I knew who Jesus was, yes, but we'd always been taught that he was just a prophet. But the way she pronounced his name wasn't just out of respect. It was out of love. I stood up quickly, Startled, "I need to go," I said. She didn't try to stop me. She just smiled and added, "If you ever want to know more, I'll be here." For weeks, I tried to forget that conversation. I focused on the children, the house, my prayers. But that question kept echoing. Have you ever felt like you were searching for something? Yes, I always searched, but I never admitted it out loud. One night, while Karim was reading in his office, I mustered the courage and shared everything with him. The woman, the question, the invitation. I expected him to get angry, to reprimand me, to forbid me from coming back. But to my surprise, he slowly closed the book, looked at me, and said, "I have been asking questions too." And at that moment, we knew we were no longer alone in the quest. We didn't even know how to name. I sat down next to Karim, still shocked by what he had just admitted. He took a deep breath, as if carrying an impossible weight, and confessed that for months he had been reading things that, according to many brothers in the mosque, were forbidden. Texts that compared scriptures, stories of a man who claimed to be much more than a prophet. Karim had tried to ignore it all, but something inside him kept bringing him back to those words. I listened to him in silence. He seemed tormented. "Amira," he said, his voice trembling. "What if we've been looking in the wrong place all this time?" That night, neither of us could sleep. We stayed awake until sunrise, talking, questioning, pouring our hearts out to each other. We didn't reach any conclusion, but something had changed between us. A small crack had appeared in the certainties that had always held our lives together, and through that crack, a light began to enter, a light that simultaneously frightened and attracted us. We decided to do something dangerous, something that could destroy everything, to seek answers together, in absolute secrecy. I went back to visit that woman, this time, taking Karim with me. She received us with the same kindness as always, as if she had been expecting us. Then she introduced us to a small community that met discreetly, frequently changing locations to avoid problems. There were Syrians, Iraqis, some Jordanians. They had all risked something to follow Jesus. They spoke to us about him, not as a distant figure or a prophet among many, but as someone alive, real, present. They opened before us a book we had never touched, the New Testament. And that night, something began to stir within us. If you've ever sought the truth knowing it could cost you everything, then you understand, because that's exactly what happened. From that point on, our lives began to crumble on the outside, or perhaps, without realizing it, began to be rebuilt on the inside. For months, we lived a double life. On the outside, everything seemed the same. Karim remained the respected Imam. I, the devoted wife. The children played carefree in the yard, unaware of the spiritual storm that engulfed our home. But in the early hours of the morning, when everyone was asleep, we met in secret. We had a tiny New Testament, hidden inside a shoebox, wrapped in fabric so that no one would find it. Every day, before going to sleep, we opened it with fear and fascination, and each word seemed different from anything we had ever read. They spoke of a God who loved without demanding perfection, who forgave without measure, who drew near precisely to those whom the world avoided. There, we encountered Jesus in a way we had never heard before, touching lepers, embracing sinners, healing the forgotten. And then we found that phrase that burned inside us. I am the way, the truth, and the life. How could anyone say something like that? And why did all of that bring us peace instead of fear? The nights grew longer and longer. We read, we cried, we argued. Karim suffered more than I did. He had so much more at stake. His ministry, his reputation, his entire identity was tied to what he preached every day. One night, with tears in his eyes, he said, "If that's true, then I've been teaching the wrong things for years. I've led people astray." I hugged him and cried with him. I didn't have any answers either. I only had one certainty. Something was happening inside us, something that wasn't just rational. It was spiritual. We began to pray in a way we had never prayed before. It was no longer rehearsed words, repeated automatically. It was sincere, open, raw conversation. We spoke to Jesus as if he were there, and in some inexplicable way, we felt that he truly was, that he heard us, that he was with us. I realized at that moment that there was no turning back. On a silent night, after reading about the forgiveness Jesus offers, Karim and I simply fell to our knees on the floor of our room. Our hands trembled, our voices faltered, and there, almost whispering, We asked him to come into our lives. There was nothing spectacular, no bright lights, no signs in the sky, but we felt something we had never felt before, a profound peace, so real it seemed to touch our skin. When we stood up, we were the same on the outside, but inside, something had changed. The next morning, we woke up different. We couldn't explain it, but we knew. It was as if, our whole lives, we had carried an invisible weight, and suddenly someone had lifted it from our backs without a word. We looked at each other and understood. We had crossed a threshold from which we could not return. We had been born again, but this new beginning would come with a price we could not yet imagine. The hardest part was deciding whether to keep it between us, or confess the truth to the world around us. Karim knew he couldn't keep preaching something he no longer believed in, and I knew I couldn't live pretending my heart was still stuck in the past. But any decision would have consequences, and those consequences included our children. For weeks, we waged an internal battle. Karim began to avoid some sermons, saying he was exhausted. People noticed. Some brothers from the mosque asked if he was ill. He responded with vague phrases, but the tension only increased. Until one day, after much prayer and tears, we made the decision we feared most. We would tell the truth. We would tell our families and the mosque leadership that we had found Jesus. We started with my father. We went to his house one afternoon, without the children. I was nervous, but determined. I calmly told him that I had found the truth in Christ, and that I could no longer follow the old path. For a few seconds, my father said nothing. He seemed not to understand. Then, as if he had been struck, his face changed. It turned red. He stood up so quickly that the chair almost fell over and shouted, "You've gone mad! You're betraying our faith! You've been deceived!" My mother started to cry. My brothers looked at us as if I were a stranger. I tried to approach my mother, but she moved away. "I don't recognize you," she murmured. My father pointed to the door, his face hard, and said, "Get out of my house. You're no longer part of our family." Those words broke something inside me. I felt like part of my heart had been left behind in that room. We walked out into the street, and Karim hugged me, saying, "I'm here. We're together." But we knew that was just the first blow. In less than 2 days, the news had spread like wildfire. Everyone knew. Imam Karim, the respected man, the advisor, the scholar, had converted, and his wife with him. The way people looked at us changed overnight. Some stared at us with pure hatred. Others looked away, as if we had ceased to exist. There were those who spat on the ground when we passed by. It was as if we had become a living curse. Karim was immediately dismissed. They held a meeting with him at the mosque, and there they called him a traitor, an apostate, an enemy of the faith. They said he had dishonored entire generations, and that he deserved to die. In a few days, we lost everything: reputation, security, family, everything. And we didn't know yet that this was just the beginning. The house where we lived wasn't ours. It belonged to the mosque itself. So, as soon as they found out about our conversion, we were evicted without even having time to argue. We gathered what we could and left. Our savings ran out far too quickly. Karim looked for work every day, knocking on doors, but nobody wanted to associate with a traitor. I couldn't find work either. It was as if we had been erased from society, as if touching us was contagious. We ended up in a dilapidated little house on the outskirts of town. We thought that was rock bottom, but it wasn't. The worst was yet to come. One morning, while Karim was out, someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, my brothers were there, serious as stone. Behind them, my father, and a man I had never seen before. My stomach sank. "We came to get the children," said my older brother. For a moment, I thought I hadn't heard right. "What?" I managed to whisper. "The children can no longer stay with you," my father replied coldly. "You will destroy them with these ideas. We will raise them." My whole body went cold. I tried to close the door, but they pushed hard and came in. The children were in the room, small, defenseless, and scared. When Yasin saw me, he ran towards me screaming, "Mom!" But my brother grabbed me and threw me against the wall. "Don't touch them!" I screamed desperately, but it was as if no one heard me. They grabbed Layla first. She was kicking, crying, with her arms outstretched to me. "Mommy! Mommy!" Those words still tear me apart inside to this day. Omar clung to my leg, his little hands trembling. "Don't let them take me, Mom," he cried. I tried to hold him, but the stranger snatched my baby from my arms. His cries seemed to echo inside my chest. I fell to my knees. "Please, please, Don't do this. They are my children." My father didn't hesitate. His eyes were hard, empty. "They're not yours anymore. You lost them when you turned your back on what's right." Yasin still tried to fight. He kicked, grabbed the door, yelled that he wanted to stay with me, but he was just a child, and the hands holding him were much stronger. When I tried to run after them, my brother blocked the entrance. "If you come any closer," he said, staring into my eyes, "it'll be worse." And then the door was slammed in my face. I lay there, fallen on the dirty ground, listening to my children's cries fading away, their names being called in the street, until everything turned silent. A silence so heavy it felt like it was suffocating me. When Karim returned and saw the empty house, his lips trembled. He couldn't say anything. He just fell to his knees and hid his face in his hands. I threw myself into his arms, and we cried right there, surrounded by our children's toys. Omar's favorite teddy bear in the corner, Layla's little shoes left near the door, Yasin's notebook still open on the table. Everything they had was there, except them, and we didn't know if we would ever see them again. Karim would sit on the floor for hours, his gaze fixed on the wall, completely still. I watched him from afar, afraid to approach and find a heart too broken to console. One night, I found him in the dark, sobbing softly. "I put them in this situation. I made the decision, and now they're paying the price," he murmured, his voice breaking with despair. I hugged him tightly, feeling my own tears stream down my face. There were no words capable of lessening the pain, only silence, only shared tears, only the crushing weight of a reality that was crushing us both completely. We tried to seek help. We knocked on the doors of authorities, wrote petitions, pleaded for justice. Some police officers bluntly said, "You yourselves provoked this. Nobody forced you." Others simply ignored our pleas. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of society, we were apostates, unworthy of protection. Our children, they said, would be better off without us. But we knew the truth. They were being used as punishment, as a warning, as an example to others who dared to follow the same path. And even amidst so much darkness, something began to happen. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't easy, but slowly we felt a silent, gentle presence that we couldn't see or touch, but that filled us from within. At night, when the pain seemed unbearable, we prayed, sometimes silently, sometimes with endless tears, and something inexplicable comforted us. A strange, almost impossible peace, but one that sustained us when our own strength failed. The small community that had guided us from the beginning did not abandon us. They visited us secretly, brought food, prayed with us, strengthening our faith amidst despair. An older woman, the one who introduced me to Jesus, sat with me one afternoon and said, "Amira, I know this is more than anyone should have to bear, but God hasn't forgotten you. He sees every tear, and one day, somehow, He will restore what was lost." I wanted to believe, but the pain was so intense that sometimes I felt like I was going to drown. One night, in despair, I got up and cried out, "Why, God, why did you ask this of us if you knew the price we would pay? Where are you now?" There was no audible response. But that same night, as I leafed through the New Testament searching for strength, my eyes fell upon a verse that burned within me. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." I cried, not because I fully understood, not because the pain had disappeared, but because I felt, in a deep and inexplicable way, that we were not alone, that, even amidst everything, our path had a purpose, that God, in some mysterious way, was with us. Time passed slowly, each day a battle. We lived in utter poverty. Karim carried boxes, cleaned streets, did any job that paid in cash without questions. I washed clothes for strangers, and the little we earned barely covered food. Many nights we fell asleep hungry, our stomachs rumbling, our hearts heavy with longing for our children. Still, we continued, not by our own strength, but because something within us refused to give up. Faith, the community of believers, continued to meet secretly. We constantly changed houses, always cautious, always vigilant. The meetings were small, never more than 6 or 7 people, but each word, each prayer, was a breath of life in the midst of the desert that surrounded us. We would meet in hidden houses, reading the Bible, praying, and sharing our experiences. In those meetings, we could finally be ourselves, without fear, without masks, just worshiping. Karim began to share his knowledge about the faith, and people listened attentively. Each word of scripture, now seen by us from a completely new angle, seemed to touch the heart of each one. Questions arose, some unexpected, others revealing personal pain and struggles, stories of broken families, shattered lives, wounded hearts, but all united by something greater, a faith that kept us strong, even when the world seemed to crumble. One afternoon, returning from one of those meetings, something made us stop. An unfamiliar car was parked near our house. Karim squeezed my hand, worried. "Let's go inside quickly," he whispered. We went in, locked the door, but that feeling of alert didn't leave us. The following night, we could barely sleep. Any noise outside made us shudder. The next day, we received an urgent message from a brother in the community. "Don't attend the next meeting. Someone is watching." My heart sank. We knew exactly what this meant. The conversion of Karim, a public figure to Christianity, had attracted unwanted attention. In Jordan, this might be tolerated in foreigners, but for citizens or well-known figures, it was a different story. We decided to stay home for a few days, trying to protect ourselves, but the tension was suffocating. Every knock on the door, every car speeding by, made us jump with fear. One night, while we were praying together, we heard voices outside, followed by violent banging on the door. "Open up, police." My heart froze. Karim looked at me, his eyes filled with fear. "They're here," he whispered. Reluctantly, he opened the door. 5 men entered, rigid, without a trace of gentleness. They pushed us against the wall, searched the house, found our Bibles, our documents, every carefully guarded memento. One of them, in a dark uniform, stared at us with contempt. "You never learn, do you?" he said in a threatening tone. They hadn't expected us to resist. They tied our hands tightly and pushed us outside. The neighbors watched, some indifferently, others with a cold smile. No one intervened. We were put into a van with no windows. The silence inside was heavy, almost suffocating. Karim tried to hold my hand, but one of the men pushed him away. Finally, we arrived at an unfamiliar building. We were dragged inside. It was a prison, but not an ordinary prison. They separated us immediately. Karim was taken down one corridor, I down another. I called his name, but he couldn't answer. They locked me in a cold, dark cell with only a thin mattress on the floor. I sat hugging my knees, trembling, and whispered, "My God, what's going to happen now?" The next day, the interrogations began. They took me to a windowless room. 2 men shouted at me, harsh and threatening words trying to break my spirit. But even in that moment of terror, I felt an inexplicable presence, a greater force holding me, reminding me that I was not alone. The questions came quickly and harshly. Who else is involved? Where do they meet? Who are the leaders? I didn't answer. It wasn't courage. It was pure terror. One of the interrogators slapped me across the face. "Answer!" he shouted. Tears streamed down my face, but I remained silent. Then they asked about our children. "Do you want to see them again?" they said cruelly. "Because if you continue like this, you'll never see them again." My heart broke at that moment. Karim suffered even more when they finally allowed us to see each other. Days later, his face was swollen, covered in bruises. Dried blood stained his shirt. He looked at me with tired eyes, but there was a flame of determination there. "I'm fine," he murmured, and I knew it wasn't true. There was pain, humiliation, but something in his spirit remained intact. Time lost its meaning. There were no windows, no clocks, no point of reference whatsoever. Only the endless cycle of interrogations, pain, and isolation. But amidst all of this, something supernatural happened. In our separate cells, we whispered our prayers to God. We asked for strength, protection for our children, courage to endure it all. We were not comforted with answers, but we felt his presence, silent, firm, sustaining us when our own strength failed. One morning, a guard opened my cell and led me to a large courtyard. Karim was already there, surrounded by armed men. Our eyes met, and I saw the same thought in him. This is the end. A man in a black uniform approached and began to read from a piece of paper. Only a few words remained etched in my memory. Condemned to public execution for apostasy and betrayal of the faith. The world seemed to freeze. I looked at Karim, who was pale, but with an inexplicable peace in his eyes. In the midst of darkness and injustice, God manifested himself in a way that defied all human logic. What was about to happen was not only the end of our lives, but the beginning of something that no one could deny. We were taken back to our cells. We didn't sleep. How could we sleep when dawn would bring our sentence? Karim and I remained silent, but praying. We didn't ask for miracles or liberation, only strength to face the pain, not to deny Jesus, to remain faithful. And we prayed for our children, that somehow God would protect them, and one day reveal to them the truth of our choices. Dawn arrived far too quickly. The guards opened our cells, and without a word, dragged us through cold, endless corridors. I could hear Karim's footsteps right behind me, his breath ragged, my heart pounding like a drum in my own ribcage. Finally, we reached a large courtyard surrounded by high walls. The sun was beginning to rise, tinging the sky with shades of orange and pink. What irony! Such a beautiful sunrise for a moment of such profound despair. The courtyard was shrouded in darkness, except for the circle of dry earth where 2 metal stakes stood, silent and menacing. Around them, a crowd watched, guards and civilians, all there as witnesses to a cruel message. It was a warning to all who dared to follow a different path. Traitors would pay dearly. We were led to the stakes and tied with thick, rough ropes that cut into our skin. I was trembling, not from cold, but from something much deeper, a mixture of fear, sadness, and resignation. I looked at Karim. Our eyes met, and without words, we exchanged everything we needed to say. I am with you. God is with us. Do not be afraid. A man approached with a gallon of gasoline. The acrid smell hit me even before the liquid touched the ground, soaking the earth around us, splashing onto our feet and legs. Tears streamed uncontrollably, not of regret, but of farewell. Goodbye to this life, goodbye to our children, goodbye to everything we knew. He placed the empty can on the ground, took a lighter from his pocket, and before the crowd shouted, "This is what happens to those who abandon the truth, to those who betray God and follow foreign lies." The crowd fell silent, some filled with hatred, others with fear, others merely curious. The man raised the lighter, showing it to everyone, and turned to us with a cold smile. "Let's see if your Jesus saves you now." The lighter misfired twice before finally igniting a small, flickering flame. He threw the flame onto the circle of gasoline. In an instant, the fire erupted, roaring around us like a living wall. The heat reached my face, smoke filled my lungs, and the earth seemed to consume everything. I closed my eyes and whispered, "God, I'm ready." But something impossible happened. The heat was there. The fire roared and rose above our heads, but we felt no pain. Our clothes didn't burn. Our skin remained intact. The ropes that bound us began to unravel, consumed by the fire, but our hands and arms remained unharmed. I looked at Karim. He was also watching, incredulous, his hands, arms, and eyes filled with tears and wonder. The fire surrounded us, but did not touch us. Our eyes met once more. This time there was no fear, only reverence. God was there, in the midst of the fire, with us. The inferno of flames continued for minutes that seemed eternal, but gradually began to subside. The gasoline ran out, and the roar of the flames gave way to the silence of a miracle. The smoke began to dissipate, and when it finally cleared, we were there, covered in ash, but alive. Our clothes were charred at the edges, but intact. Our skin, unharmed. The ropes had vanished, turned to ash. The silence that followed was almost deafening. The crowd stared at us, eyes wide, mouths agape, in disbelief. Some recoiled, others fell to their knees. The man who had lit the bonfire was paralyzed, staring at his own hands as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. A guard dropped his weapon. Another covered his mouth with his hand. Sobs echoed among the people. A woman cried out, "It's a miracle." Another man fell to the ground, trembling. The commander who had read our sentence was pale, speechless, staring at us. Then, the man who had lit the fire took a step toward us, and his legs gave way. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "What kind of God?" he began, but his voice faltered. "What kind of God is this?" I trembled, not from fear, but from something sacred, profound. Finally, my voice trembling but firm, I answered, "The living God, the one who walks through the fire with his children." He wept even harder, covering his face with his hands. Other guards approached slowly, observing Karim and me as if we were ghosts. An older man, with scars on his face, also knelt. "I've seen many things in my life," he said in a hoarse voice, "but never this. Never." The crowd began to murmur, some crying, others arguing, incredulous. "It's witchcraft," I heard someone say. No witchcraft can do this. This is divine, replied another. A third shouted from behind. Their God protected them. There's no other explanation. Karim, in a weak but clear voice, spoke. It wasn't our strength. It wasn't magic. It was Jesus. He saved us. He is here now. His words echoed through the silent courtyard. Some guards recoiled, frightened, but others began to kneel one by one. Not all, but enough to completely change the atmosphere. Fear gave way to reverence. Doubt began to give way to faith. In the midst of that courtyard of ashes and smoke, something invisible, but powerful, moved. The commander finally spoke, his voice firm, yet without anger. Take us away from here. He trembled, confused, but he didn't say, kill us or imprison us. Just take us away. No one knew what to do with us. We had been condemned to death by fire, but the fire did not touch us. We had defied the laws of nature, and no one, not even those who hated us, could deny what they had witnessed. Back at the prison, everything changed. The guards escorting us didn't push or shout. They looked at us with a mixture of fear, admiration, and respect. A young man, perhaps 25 years old, walked silently beside me. Finally, his voice trembling, he asked, "How is this possible?" I was still processing what had happened, feeling the heat of the fire in my memory, but my skin was intact. I lowered my voice and said, "It wasn't for us. It was for him, for Jesus." The young man nodded slowly, silently, as if he had just witnessed something that would change his life forever. It was as if we were trying to comprehend something that defied everything we knew. This time, they put us in the same cell. Karim and I embraced in silence, trembling, crying, not from pain, but from gratitude. God had saved us, not by sparing us the ordeal, but by walking with us through it. We knelt together on the cold floor and prayed, not with elaborate words, only with tears and whispers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That night, something extraordinary began to happen. We heard footsteps outside the cell. The door opened slowly. It was the young guard from before. He looked around, making sure no one else was nearby, and entered, closing the door behind him. He knelt before us and said, "I need to know more about your God, about Jesus." Karim and I looked at each other, stunned. We could hardly believe it. He continued, "I've had doubts for years, but today I saw something that..." His heart was open. We spent hours talking in whispers. We told our story. We talked about Jesus, his love, his grace, his sacrifice. We read verses from memory, since there was no Bible in the cell. He listened attentively, absorbing every word. When we talked about the forgiveness of sins, his eyes filled with tears. "I did terrible things," he confessed. "I hurt people. He asked if there was forgiveness for someone like him, someone who had blindly followed orders. I told him the truth. Jesus didn't come for the righteous, but for sinners, for people like us, and for people like you. That night, in that cold, dark cell, the young guard surrendered his life to Christ. We prayed together, laying hands on each other, and felt the presence of the Holy Spirit fill the small space. When he came out, he was a transformed man. He wasn't the only one. In the following days, other guards began to approach, some out of curiosity, others out of genuine thirst. One of them, a man who had worked at the prison for 20 years, said, "I've seen many people face sentencing. Some scream, some beg, some curse, but you were at peace. And then came the fire. I can't get it out of my head." We spoke to him about the peace that surpasses all understanding, about how Jesus can fill the void that no religion, no ideology, no earthly pleasure can fill. He listened in silence, tears streaming down his face, marked by time. And finally, with a choked voice, he said, "I want that peace. I want to know that Jesus." Right there, in a corner of the prison, another heart was transformed. The miracle they witnessed spread rapidly, not only within the prison, but beyond its walls. Some called it a trick, others witchcraft, but many, deep in their hearts, knew the truth. They had witnessed something inexplicable, and on that day, seeds of faith began to sprout, slowly, in the most unexpected places. My heart raced. "What are you saying?" I asked, almost in disbelief. Fad looked around, making sure no one else was listening. "We're going to get them out of here. In 3 days there will be a shift change. Some of us will stay on guard. We'll give you civilian clothes, fake documents, and take you to the desert. There, you'll be safe, for now." A heavy silence fell over us. Hope and fear mingled in our chests. Karim held my hand, squeezing it tightly. "God provided this," he murmured. "He didn't leave us here forever." Fad continued, explaining the details, which guards would accompany us, which routes we would take, where we would meet in the middle of the night. Everything had to be perfect. Any mistake could cost us our lives. Each of his words seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime of risk and courage. In the following days, we prepared ourselves. We prayed together, asking for discernment and protection. In each moment of silence, we felt God's presence strengthening us. Every whispered conversation, every glance exchanged with the believing guards, was a reminder that we were not alone. Finally, night fell. The prison slept, but our hearts were awake, pulsing with adrenaline and faith. Fad and the other guards met us at the appointed time. Civilian clothes hidden under dark cloaks, documents ready, gazes fixed. Each step down the dark corridor felt like an eternity. Each door that opened brought us closer to freedom, but also to danger. As we exited through the last prison door, the full moon illuminated our path. The desert stretched ahead, silent, vast, yet promising. Karim and I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, we felt the cold, free air touching our faces without fear. "And now?" I asked, looking towards the horizon. "Now we trust," said Karim. "He brought us this far. He will guide us forward." And so began our journey, a journey of freedom, of faith, and of transformed lives. Not only ours, but those of all who, within the prison, had touched the divine in an inexplicable way. From there, you'll have to continue to the border. There are people waiting for you on the other side, Fad said. Karim and I exchanged incredulous glances. "Why would you do this for us?" I asked, still trying to understand. Fad smiled, but there was sadness and firmness in his gaze. "Because you gave us something we never had. Hope, faith, a purpose. We can't let you take that away from us. Jesus saved you from the fire. Now it's our turn to do something for you." The 3 days that followed were a mixture of anxiety and constant prayer. We asked God to guide our every step, to protect the guards who risked their lives for us, to lead us to a safe place. We didn't know if we would make it, or if we would see our children again, but we trusted them completely, and God. When the night of the escape finally arrived, Fad and 2 other guards entered our cell shortly after midnight. They brought simple clothes, worn tunics, scarves to cover our heads, old sandals. "You need to blend in," Fad said. Changing clothes was quick and silent. We received documents with false names, detailed instructions about the route, and warnings about checkpoints. We left the cell in silence, passing through dark corridors while prisoners slept. Some saw us, and in whispers, wished us protection. "May God protect you." We reached a rarely used side door. Fad opened it with a key he clearly shouldn't have had. Outside, an old car awaited, its engine off. "Get in," he ordered. We climbed in and settled in. The other 2 guards stayed behind, erasing any sign of our departure. Fad started the engine and we drove off slowly, with our headlights off. When we were far enough away from the prison, he accelerated, and freedom began to feel real. We drove for hours, crossing the desert. The night was cold, and the starry sky seemed to envelop us. The silence was heavy, each of us lost in our thoughts. I looked out the window, watching the dunes pass by, feeling a strange mixture, freedom and pain. Freedom because we were escaping, pain because we were leaving our children behind. Finally, in the middle of nowhere, Fad stopped the car. "From here you continue on foot," he said, handing us a backpack with water, food, and a hand-drawn map. "Head north. In 2 days you'll reach the border. Look for a house with a blue door. Knock 3 times and say you're from the Firewalkers. They'll know what to do." Fad hugged us, tears in his eyes. "I will never forget what you did for me." Karim hugged him tightly. "We won't forget you either, brother." Fad smiled, got back into the car, and disappeared over the horizon, leaving us alone in the desert. The night's cold cut to the bone, but there was no other option but to keep going. We walked without stopping, resting only briefly. At dawn, we found some shade and slept for a few hours. Then we continued. The desert was unforgiving. The sun punished. The sand got into our shoes. Thirst was intense, and yet each step brought us closer to freedom. On the second night, we glimpsed lights in the distance. The village. We approached cautiously, watching every movement to avoid patrols. Finally, we found the house with the blue door, exactly as Fad had described. Our hearts raced, hope blossomed within us, and an inexplicable feeling of peace enveloped us. We knocked 3 times on the door. We waited. It opened slowly, revealing an older man who watched us intently, assessing us. Karim, his voice choked with emotion, said, "We come from those who walk in the fire." The man smiled, and the relief we felt was immediate when he opened the door completely. "Come in, quickly." The house was small but welcoming. A woman and 2 young men greeted us with kind eyes and open hearts. They offered us fresh water, hot food, and a safe place to rest. "Tomorrow," the man began, "we will take you to the other side. But tonight, just rest. You are safe here." Insurance. That word seemed almost magical after so much time filled with fear and uncertainty. For the first time in months, we slept soundly, enveloped in a rest that had seemed impossible. The next morning, the man and one of the young men drove us in an old pickup truck to the border. We traveled along poorly guarded roads, hidden among crates of vegetables. A local pastor, involved in caring for refugees, awaited us on the other side. We had succeeded. We were free. But freedom did not erase the pain we carried. Our children were still behind us, separated, not knowing if they would ever see us again. Today, we live in a country I prefer not to name, not out of fear, but out of prudence. Threats still exist. There are still those who seek us out, but we are alive. And more importantly, we are serving. We work with refugees, with broken families, with people who, like us, have lost everything. We tell our story. We share about the God who walks through the fire alongside his children, and we see hope reborn in eyes that had lost all light. Our home is simple, a modest apartment. Sometimes money is tight, but God provides in ways we never imagined, through the church, through generous strangers, through paths only he could open. We have never lacked the essentials, but there is a wound that still bleeds, the absence of our children. They would have been 17, 15, and 12 years old. We haven't seen them since the day they were taken from our arms. We don't know exactly where they are, or how they are. Sometimes we receive fragments of news through clandestine networks, vague messages saying they are alive, that they are under the care of relatives, but also that they have been told lies about us. To think that they might grow up hating us or believing falsehoods about our love is a pain that cuts deeper than any memory of the fire. There are nights when I can't sleep. I sit by the window, looking at the stars, wondering if they look at the same stars, if somewhere in their hearts they still remember us. Karim suffers the same way. I've found him crying silently, holding an old photo, the children's faces etched on paper, but alive in his memory. And yet, amidst all this pain, something sustains us. God's promise, the certainty that he cares for our children, even when we cannot, and the hope that one day, whether in this life or in eternity, we will be together again. And this hope, however fragile it may sometimes seem, keeps us strong. Even from afar, we receive coded news through people crossing the border. We know that the small group of believers in the prison continues to grow. The guards who converted continue to share the gospel. Some have been transferred to other prisons and have started new small faith communities. The seed that God planted on that fiery day continues to bear fruit. Fad sent us a message a few months ago. It simply said, "The fire is still burning, not with visible flames, but in our hearts. Thank you for lighting it." I cried when I read those words. I cried with gratitude, joy, and emotion. What wonder! God transformed our pain, our suffering, and our loss into something beautiful. Not in the way we expected, nor in the way we would have chosen, but beautiful nonetheless. Share this story so that hope continues to ignite hearts in darkness. Because this is not just our story. It is the story of thousands around the world who face persecution for following Jesus. People who have lost families, homes, freedom. People who have lost everything, but they continue because they have found something more valuable than any comfort or security the world can offer. Sometimes people ask us, is it worth losing so much? Our answer is always the same. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Not because we are strong or special, but because Jesus is worth more than everything. More than comfort, more than security, more than acceptance, even more than our own children. Even if saying this breaks my heart, I don't say this coldly, but with tears, with pain, and at the same time with conviction. In the darkest moment of our lives, When the fire should have consumed us, Jesus was there. He didn't save us from the fire. He walked with us through it. And that presence, that closeness, that undeniable certainty of his love changed everything. Today, each day we live is with a renewed purpose, not for ourselves, not to seek comfort, but to bring hope to others who are going through their own fires, to say, "You are not alone. God is with you, and he can do the impossible." There's something I've learned in these years of pain and victory. The fire we faced wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, the greatest test of faith in our lives. But the same God who saved us from the physical flames continues to save us every day from the invisible flames of pain, doubt, and despair. Every time I feel the absence of my children almost drowning me, God sustains me. Every time guilt tries to crush me, he reminds me of his calling and strengthens me, not with grandiose visions or spectacular words, but with his constant, faithful, and unwavering presence. This is the truth I want you to absorb from this story. Even in the most intense fire, even in the deepest darkness, God does not abandon us. He walks with us, transforms our pain into hope, and shows us that life, however difficult it may be, can still be full of purpose, faith, and love. God doesn't promise to deliver us from trials, but he promises to walk with us through them. He doesn't guarantee there will be no pain, but he promises that the pain will have a purpose. He doesn't say we will understand everything, but he assures us that he is faithful. And when your time comes, because it will come, when you face your own fire, literal or figurative, remember this: the same God who protected us will also protect you. Not necessarily in the same way, not necessarily with visible results, but he will sustain you, carry you through the trial, and on the other side, you will be different, refined, purified, stronger in faith, though perhaps more fragile within yourself. The fire didn't just destroy us, it transformed us. And now, years later, we continue to burn, not with pain or bitterness, but with passion, with purpose, with love for the one who loved us first, and who loves us to the end. If you are going through your own fire today, if you feel the flames surrounding you, if you think you won't survive, listen to these words: you are not alone. God is with you in the midst of the flames, holding your hand, whispering your name, promising that when it's all over, when the smoke clears, you will still be standing, different, yes, perhaps scarred, but alive, and with a story to tell that will glorify his name. Our children are in God's hands. That is the truth we cling to. We don't know when, we don't know how, but we believe that one day we will see them again, whether in this life or in eternity. And when that day comes, we will tell them everything, how much we love them, why we made the choices we made, and how God saved us from the fire. Until then, we continue walking, serving, loving, not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but always, in the fire and out of it, in abundance and scarcity, in unity and separation. This is our story, but more than that, it is his story. The story of a God who loves so much that he walks through the fire with us, who does not abandon us when the world condemns us, who transforms ashes into beauty and mourning into dance. If there's one thing we want you to remember from all of this, it's this: Jesus is worth it. Every tear, every loss, every moment of pain is worth it, because he is real, he is faithful, and he never abandons us. Heavenly Father, for all those who are on their own fire today, we ask that you walk with them, that they feel your presence when all seems dark, that they know your love when they feel alone, and that one day, when the smoke clears, they may rise and say, God was with me, and it was worth it. In Jesus' name, amen.